Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 241 based on novel. So let's start. How could this happen? The Hall Master, who was surrounded and controlled by the strange fire, because the body had been destroyed in the explosion just now, what remained at the moment was just a wisp of soul. When the strange fire contracted, his soul was easily grasped in the palm of Xiao Yang's hand. Do you think only you know me well? I've seen your escape methods countless times. The best weapon to deal with you ghosts is strange fire. Your strange means are nothing in front of strange fire. If you want to escape, you look down on yourself. Xiao Yang's words fell, and the Hall Master realized in horror that he thought no one could crack the escape means. Xiao Yang had seen through it for a long time, but what surprised him most was that Xiao Yang, who was also exhausted from the source gas, was still able to mobilize the source gas at the moment. Why, very curious. It seemed that Xiao Yang saw the doubts in the heart of the Hall Master. Xiao Yang grinned and joked. It seems you really forgot. I'm a herbalist. Not only refining pills is my specialty, but eating pills is also my specialty. As soon as he said this, the Lord of the Hall suddenly understood that it was no wonder that Xiao Yang could mobilize his qi at this time. No wonder the guy in front of him became braver and braver. He was not tired at all. It turned out that he had the power of pills. Unfortunately, when he understood this, it was too late. Now that he has been caught by Xiao Yang, it is easy for the other party to kill him. However, different from his imagination, Xiao Yang took out a jade bottle and sealed the Lord of the Hall with the help of different fire. Then he threw it into the Naji and looked at the battle circle of the strong in the source territory on the other side. In the battle circle of Lung Bingshuang and others at the moment, because the other party has lost a strong person in the source environment, the Tongtian giant ape who vacated his hand quickly supported Xie and Murang Xian, while Lung Bingshuang and Beiwang both have the upper hand, so there is no need to worry. Therefore, Xiao Yang's line of sight shifted again to the 100 strong people who are still in fierce confrontation on the other side. Compared with the battle on the cold and frost side, the battle situation here will be relatively sticky. After all, they are all strong fighters against the Emperor, and there are a large number of people. Although Xiao Men's side occupies the upper point, it is difficult to end the battle in a short time. If there is no absolute force to suppress it, the battle is bound to last longer. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang's face suddenly showed a cold color, his body moved, and the huge virtual image flashed rapidly in the sky. He soon rushed into the crowd, rushing left and right, and quickly defeated more than a dozen emperor fighting strong men on the side of Qin Huangmi Valley. When the public saw that Xiao Yang killed more than a dozen strong fighters in the blink of an eye, a strong fear quickly rose in their hearts. Even when some people saw Xiao Yang's hand, they immediately had the idea of running away. However, the people on the Xiao Men side were shocked and awed when they saw Xiao Yang. They all fell on Xiao Yang. After that, under the leadership of Xiao Yang, all the strong fighters of the Xiao Men side set off together to defeat the Qin Huangmi Valley. All the strong fighters of the other side were dead and fled in just a few minutes. In a twinkling of an eye, the whole Qin Huangmi Valley was scattered with birds and animals. Now, except Qin Shuo, the valley leader, and the other two strong fighters of the source territory, all the others were solved by Xiao Yang. In other words, from this moment, there are only 3 people left in Qin Huangmi Valley, Qin Shuo. However, after the war, Qin Huangmi Valley is bound to be removed from the western regions, and Xiao Men will become another behemoth in the western region. Soon, under the continuous attack of Xie and others, the 2 strong Huiyuan strong men in Qin Huangmi Valley also lost one after another, lost their combat power and fell into the city below. At this moment, the strong Huiyuan strong men still fighting in the field, except Yi Luotian and Qin Shuo, only the 2 strong Huiyuan strong men in the Ghost Hall are still struggling to support. Until a certain moment, the 2 men finally couldn't hold up the blows from Xiao Yang and others. When they wanted to escape, they were killed by a giant ape in the sky. Instead, the other man rushed out of the siege and quickly fled Shahu. Xie and others were just about to pursue, but they were stopped by Xiao Yang. Then, a group of people looked at him, it fell on the last 2. When Leng Bingshuang retreated a distance from the North King, Xiao Yang and 7 other people, full of 7 strong people in the source environment, blocked them from all directions and completely surrounded them. Facing the encirclement of the 7 strong people in the source environment, Yi Luotian and Qin Shuo couldn't help looking at each other in despair. They didn't expect that the final result would be like this. Everything they had calculated, including the people in the ghost hall, should have been an absolutely perfect plan. What they didn't expect was that even if there was a strong person in the source environment, unexpectedly, he still failed to solve Xiao Yang. What should I do? It's almost impossible to rush out of this encirclement. Looking around for a week, Qin Shuo found that no matter from which direction or angle, the other party has no dead corner. Can they only be trapped here? Valley Master, up to now, we have no choice but to fight. As long as we rush out, we still have a chance. Hearing Qin Shuo's words, Yi Luotian's eyes were shining, and then his tone was particularly solemn. Hearing the speech, Qin Shuo is also very unwilling to bite his teeth. Today's war, he not only lost 2 strong people in Huiyuan territory, but also built the whole Qinhuangmi Valley here. This war can be described as a collapse. But because of this, his heart will be more unwilling. If he can rush out and leave here, he will return all his revenge to Xiao Yang in the future. Poof! However, at the moment when Qin Shuo clenched his teeth and thought, a palm was suddenly inserted into his lower abdomen. At the same time, a pill was also put in. You! The moment he looked up, Qin Shuo saw Yi Luotian's ferocious face. He never thought that Yi Luotian, who was in the same boat with him, would shoot him even at this critical moment. Gaga, Valley Master, you are dead anyway. Why not just complete me and use your death to make me safe? Wouldn't it be better? Qin Shuo didn't understand Yi Luotian's words, but he clearly felt that a strange plant was growing at a very fast speed in the cyclone in his body, and he was also extremely frightened to find that the source gas in his body was no longer controlled by him. Then, when Yi Luotian's mind flashed, all the source gas left in the cyclone in Qin Shuo's body rioted wildly in an instant. Looking at this, it was obviously a meaning of self-explosion. Unfortunately, even if it was to explode, it was not Qin Shuo's own will. No, get back, this guy is going to explode. On the other hand, Xiao Yang and others only recovered from the shock of the previous moment. For a moment, the other people present had no time to make other actions. While their faces changed dramatically, their bodies retreated rapidly. At the same time, the remaining source qi in their bodies poured out unreservedly and intertwined with each other, completely blocking the space where the 2 people were. Then, boom! The earth-shaking explosion suddenly sounded, and the terrible energy storm swept away in an instant. The powerful force bombarded the energy mask condensed by Xiao Yang and others. The 7 people's faces turned pale at the same time, and their faces were full of dignified color. After a few breaths, they only heard a crisp click, the energy shield gathered by the 7 people was suddenly broken, and the remaining power blew the 7 people out in an instant. Then, without waiting for the energy storm in the sky to completely disperse, there was suddenly a confused figure covered with blood, staggering out of it, and flying away outside the Shay shop without stopping, and this person was Yi Luotian. After seeing Xiao Yang and others who were blown away from a long distance, Yi Luotian's face couldn't help showing a very cold smile. Although he paid a great price this time, now he was finally saved. Without the obstruction of Xiao Yang and others, he could leave here safely. At the same time, Xiao Yang and others looked at Yi Luotian who was about to escape. They all wanted to come forward reluctantly, but unfortunately, the source gas in their body was also consumed in the storm just now. There was no extra strength to pursue again. They could only watch Yi Luotian leave. Damn it! He scolded secretly in his heart. Xiao Yang didn't expect that Yi Luotian would be so cruel, even his partners. However, just when Xiao Yang and others thought Yi Luotian would flee, not far in front of Yi Luotian, more than 20 duty strong men rushed from all directions and stood in front of Yi Luotian. All these people were duty strong men who had been imprisoned by Yi Luotian in Pingshanao before. Accompanied by a painful scream, Yi Luotian was besieged and killed by those who fought against the emperor. The man who led to all this can also be called a generation of treacherous heroes. In the end, he ate his own evil consequences. With the fall of Yi Luotian, the Battle of Shahu ended. Qin Huangmi Valley, a generation of super overlord in the western regions, was destroyed. Together with many affiliated forces under his command, it ended. In this battle, Xiao Men not only defeated Qin Huangmi Valley and killed Yi Luotian, but also successfully captured a hall master of the Ghost Hall. Xiao Yang, a strongman at the level of Guanjing, can be sure that this guy is definitely the general leader of all ghost halls in the western regions. Now that the Lord of the Hall has been solved by him, other people will not be a problem. That is to say, even the ghost hall in the western regions can no longer pose any threat to him. The war ended. Except for the strong man in Huyuan territory of the ghost hall who took the opportunity to flee, all the strong men above Huyuan territory of Qin Huangmi Valley were killed, and the strong man in fighting the emperor killed dozens of people. These achievements are terrible. Of course, although the Qin Huangmi Valley side has been completely solved, the people of Xiao Men also have a lot of deaths and injuries, but on the whole, it is undoubtedly just a drop in the bucket. After that, relying on the pill, Xiao Yang and others recovered some strength. After cleaning up the war, they simply rested in the city below. In this war, all the people present consumed a lot and could no longer afford any fatigue. At the moment, what they needed most was rest. At least Xiao Yang was really tired at this time. In the previous war, he had been tightening all the nerves of his body, and the strength of his whole body had reached a high explosive level. The long-term high operation has exhausted him physically and mentally. Now that the war is over, he doesn't faint immediately, which is lucky. While all the people of Xiao Men were resting in the city, on the other side, the strong ghost temple who had just escaped from the tiger's mouth, at this moment, in front of him, a group of people in black robes appeared very abruptly and surrounded it quickly. Seeing these sudden figures, a pair of scarlet eyes under the black fog can't help showing deep fear. With his strength, he has never found out when these people appeared. This shows that the cultivation of these people is at least above the 9-star fighting emperor, and it is even very possible that this is a group. A team composed entirely of strong people in Huyuan territory, dare to block the way of this temple. Do you know who this temple is? Although he knew that the people in front of him were not very human, at this time, he could only try to shock them back in the safest way. Otherwise, once these people shot him, he could not escape in the hands of these guys according to his current situation. He, the ghost hall, who doesn't know on the mainland, but we kill the people in the ghost hall. Hearing the words with a slight warning from the black fog, one of the people in black robes smiled coldly, immediately looked up, showed his golden eyes, stared at the people in the ghost hall opposite, and said coldly, "Kill." As soon as the voice fell, the bodies of the two black-robed people beside them suddenly flickered, but in the blink of an eye, they had appeared in front of the black fog. Their palms poked out from under their sleeve robes, and the glittering golden light was printed in their palms, rotating rapidly and patting heavily against the black fog in front of them. The other party's sudden move surprised the guy in the black fog. When he was about to retreat, he was suddenly frightened to find that a golden light array had been formed at his feet. His body was firmly locked by the light array, and he couldn't escape at all. After control, in the black fog, the pair of scarlet eyes finally noticed the special badge on the chest of the two black-robed people in front of them. For a moment, the black-robed people were infinitely frightened in their hearts and couldn't help shouting in their mouth, "You are heaven." However, before the words in his mouth were completely spit out, the two palms had fallen on his head. In a twinkling of an eye, he killed him here. One strike killed the strong man in Huyuan territory of the Ghost Hall. One of the black-robed people put out his hand again, took out a strange mask from the black fog that had not yet dispersed, and handed the backhand to the black-robed man. "Let's go. With this ghost face, we can go back and make a job. Otherwise, as soon as the top sees that we haven't made a move, we must complain again." Put away the mask, and a helpless sigh came out under the black robe. Soon, he quickly disappeared here with a crowd. On the other side, in Shahu, two figures left the city quickly one after the other, but when they left, they had inexplicably more Naji in their hands. In a twinkling of an eye, it was half a month later. With the end of the First World War of Shahu, Qin Huangmi Valley quickly disappeared from the western regions, and all the people or things about Qinhuangmi Valley disappeared in the blink of an eye, but at the same time, the news about Xiao Men spread rapidly throughout the western regions in half a month. The end of a generation of power also announced the rise of another great power. Xiao Men will become another behemoth in the western regions. Although he has not done so yet, in fact, everyone in the western regions has understood this in their hearts. Of course, Xiao Yang, the leader of the Xiao clan, became even more popular with the name of the Xiao clan. This peerless genius who ascended to the top of the Huiyuan territory at a young age, not only achieved great accomplishments, but also removed two major disasters for the western regions and saved countless lives. Now, he is an admirer of many people in the western regions, even many people. Xiao Yang has been regarded as the object of his lifelong pursuit, so he is practicing crazily. For these reasons, in a short period of half a month, the patriarchs of more than 100 forces in the western regions gathered towards the Shaolin Mountains. What they did was to join the Xiao Gate and see Xiao Yang with their own eyes. Even Qinhuangmi Valley, which threatened to die, did not have many forces to agree with it. It is precisely because all the leaders of these forces came to the Shaolin mountain range that all warcraft in the Shaolin mountain range rioted for a time. If it were not for the cold frost to suppress, I'm afraid it would not be so easy for the leaders of those forces to enter the Shaolin mountain range no matter how powerful they are. Although there are indeed many leaders of forces entering Shaolin mountain range, after many passes of cold frost and little medical fairy, only 1/3 of the total number of people successfully stay. This also makes people of other forces quite unwilling, but they can only leave lost in the end. As for those who succeeded in staying, they did not see Xiao Yang as successfully as expected. For their questions, Xiao Yixian and Leng Bingxuang agreed that the latter was closing the customs, but no one knew when they would leave the customs. For this, the patriarchs of those forces had no choice but to withdraw their curiosity. Finally, after the arrangement of Xiao Yixian and others, they left the Shaolin Mountains. After all, this is the territory of warcraft. Once humans gather here for a long time, even with the suppression of cold frost, those warcraft will inevitably riot. After killing these endless guys, Xiao Yixian and Leng Bingxuang immediately returned Liu Cheng and others. In half a month, these guys had fully recovered from their injuries. The reason why they continued to stay here is undoubtedly for Xiao Yang's reward. Naturally, Xiao Yixian and Leng Bingxuang know this very well. At the beginning, these guys were reluctant to let them go. They were afraid that Xiao Yang was going to kill the donkey. They were not willing to leave until Leng Bingxuang and the great apes were forced by momentum. Of course, before leaving, the little doctor made a thunder punishment oath. Seeing that the little doctor fairy is willing to make a thunder punishment oath for Xiao Yang, even with a cold and frosty temper, she can't help but be surprised. At the same time, there is a trace of inexplicable jealousy and unwillingness at the bottom of her heart, just like she should have been the person who made the thunder punishment oath. With the retreat of various forces, the peace in Shaolin Mountain has been restored temporarily. Although all the injuries suffered by those who fight the Emperor have been healed, the injuries in their bodies are not as simple as on the surface. They need a lot of time to recover completely. Therefore, in the next period of time, everyone also entered a closed state. Only Murang hurried back to the clan after a short rest after the war. In a twinkling of an eye, another 2 months passed. Leng Bingxuang and others had left the customs, but they had not seen Xiao Yang appear for a long time, which made them a little worried. However, at this moment, Xiao Yang was no longer in the Shaolin Mountains. On the contrary, a few days before Leng Bingxuang and others left the customs, he came to the western wasteland without everyone knowing. A few days ago, Xiao Yang woke up from seclusion. This time, not only all the injuries in his body recovered, but also his accomplishments were completely consolidated. In the later stage of the source territory, his own combat power was also improved. Although the improvement cannot be seen now, as long as it is time to really use it, these forces, it will bring endless benefits to Xiao Yang. After Xiao Yang woke up, he didn't show up in a hurry. Instead, he took out the jade bottle containing the soul of the master of the hall. After a long time of torture, this guy gave the location of several ghost halls in the western regions. Unfortunately, this guy didn't know all the details about Zuna. Now, Xiao Yang came to the western wasteland to destroy the branches of the Ghost Hall. According to the information provided by the hall leader, Xiao Yang soon came to a desert area called Shahu Swamp. The environment here is just like its name. The eye is full of long yellow sand. What is different from other places is that the sand here does not show the same sand dunes as other places, but is as gentle and quiet as the lake. A dark wind full of gravel blew between heaven and earth. Xiao Yang clearly saw the surface of the sand lake in front of him. Actually, there was a layer of ripples like water waves on the lake. The sand lake is really strange. Seeing such a strange scene, Rao was surprised by Xiao Yang's knowledge. In order to satisfy his curiosity, Xiao Yang even played an energy competition with one hand and directed it directly at the sand lake in front of him, but then the strange scene appeared again. The energy competition played by Xiao Yang was like hitting in the water, deep into the sand lake, and even set off a wave completely formed by sand. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang was shocked by the strangeness of the sand lake. No wonder the Ghost Hall chose to be stationed in such a place. With such a strange geographical environment, it is believed that almost no one would like to come here, so this has become their best place to stay. Passing over the surface of the sand lake, a few minutes later, Xiao Yang's vision in front gradually became dim. Then, a dark building like a towering mountain appeared in front of Xiao Yang, and here is the first Ghost Hall explained by the Lord of the Hall. Without any hesitation, Xiao Yang forcibly broke the special prohibition at the door, and then rushed into the hall. While alerting all the strong in the hall, he also killed all the people in the Ghost Hall in the shortest time, even those who were not seen but could be perceived by his soul power. They were all killed by Xiao Yang. In the face of Xiao Yang's attack, these so-called strong people in the Ghost Hall couldn't stop him. In just a few minutes, all the strong people in the Ghost Hall in the hall were killed by Xiao Yang. Together with the magnificent black building, Xiao Yang forcibly razed to the ground with one punch. Finally, the ruins of the hall lost all the strength support, they sank in the sand lake. Then next, there are the two Ghost Halls in the other two places. In the next few days, Xiao Yang almost walked the whole western wasteland, and the other two halls were destroyed by Xiao Yang in the same way. In this way, all the Ghost Hall forces remaining in the western region were cleaned up by Xiao Yang. After solving these things, Xiao Yang should naturally return to the Shaolin Mountains. However, at this time, Murang, who had left in advance, suddenly returned and came to the Shaolin Mountains again. This time, his goal was to point to the cold frost. In the Shaolin Mountains, when Lung Bingshuang knew the reason and purpose of Murang's coming here, the cold killing intention suddenly appeared on the beautiful cheeks. Two white jade hands held tightly involuntarily. In his heart, a pent-up anger rose again. They have the face to come here. Standing on the cliff, the cold frost and beautiful eyes stared at the empty space in front of them, and the breath in the body surged. Even the energy between heaven and earth also rioted uncontrollably. The mountain peak trembled, and the terrible momentum was invisible, covering the whole Shaolin mountain range. This also led to countless warcraft in the mountains and forests curling up on the ground in panic at the moment, with low sobs in their mouths, indicating the fear in their hearts. At this moment, even Tianying and others are also frightened by this terrible pressure. Their bodies are shaking and kneeling on the distant mountain, with infinite panic in their hearts. Even Murang, who had an excellent relationship with Cold Frost, was pale and half knelt involuntarily in the face of the pressure of Cold Frost, showing a respectful look to Cold Frost. At the same time, outside the Shaolin Mountains, Xiao Yang came all the way from the western wasteland, but as soon as he arrived here, he immediately noticed the difference in the Shaolin Mountains. This is Cold Frost. What's the matter? Feeling the anger filled with that breath, Xiao Yang's face immediately changed dramatically. Did someone come to Shaolin Mountain to make trouble in the days he left? Die. With this in mind, Xiao Yang suddenly burst into a rage. He let out a low drink in his mouth. The source gas in his body flowed wildly. Tianjuabu and Yixiangju instantly reached the limit, but disappeared in the periphery of Shaolin mountain range in an instant. My lord, the purpose of their coming to the western regions this time is to bring you back to your family. It seems that they hope you can recognize your ancestors and return to your ancestors. Don't continue to wander outside. I discussed with my father. We also think that you might as well return to your family instead of staying in this remote western region. After all, that's your real home. For a long time, when Lung Bingshuang gradually converged, Murang Xian opened his mouth carefully. However, at the moment when his words fell, Lung Bingshuang's extremely cold sight fell on him in an instant. It's stupid. What's the real home? Have you forgotten how ruthlessly they drove us out of the family and ruthlessly killed so many of our people? Now you have to persuade me to go back. You really disappoint me. Hearing the speech, Murang Xian's face could not help showing a bitter look. Of course, he knew that the cold frost in front of him would not agree to go back anyway. Of course, he didn't want to influence the choice of cold frost, but what he had to do now was that those guys threatened them with their family's sexual life, either brought cold frost in front of them, or they wiped their entire family out of the history of the mainland. Of course, apart from today, and the last time he came to Shaolin mountain range, he was also for this purpose. However, at that time, he couldn't speak because of Xiao Men and Qin Huangmi Valley, but this time it was different. The group had issued an order. If they couldn't bring cold and frost back this time, they would kill in the family as a last resort. Murongshuan just came to Shaolin mountain range and wanted to try to invite the cold frost back. Unfortunately, Lung Bingshuang's rebellious attitude was what he had expected, and before he set out, his father had already told him that if Lung Bingshuang didn't want to, he would never force it, let alone use the family crisis as an excuse to bind her. Therefore, after hearing Lung Bingshuang's answer, Murang Xian smiled bitterly and bowed to Lung Bingshuang. He wanted to turn around and go back. As the minority leader of the family, the ethnic group is facing such a crisis. He must be with the family anyway. The only thing that makes him happy is that Murong Chanxian is fortunately not in the family. Otherwise, if he takes the latter into it, he will not be willing to die. However, at the moment when Murong Xian was about to turn around and leave, between heaven and earth, only a sharp breaking wind sounded. In an instant, a ghostly figure appeared in front of him. The powerful claws even almost fell on his throat. Fortunately, this person recognized the identity of the former at the moment of appearance. Otherwise, I'm afraid the Murongshuan Hui will die here in vain today. Who? For a moment, Murong Xian's clothes were soaked in cold sweat. When he looked up in horror, he only saw a young face full of sweat. At the moment, he was looking at himself with a sad face. He was still panting heavily, with a bit of happiness and helplessness on his face. Where did Xiao Yang expect that the fierce war originally imagined would appear in front of him in such an embarrassing posture? Taking back his palm, Xiao Yang smiled awkwardly. At the same time, the breath of death shrouded in Murong Xian's heart also quietly dispersed at this moment. At that moment just now, he didn't even feel a trace of Xiao Yang's breath. He didn't even know when Xiao Yang appeared in front of him. Was the speed of the other party approaching this level? At the same time, Lung Bingshuang's eyes also fell on Xiao Yang. Seeing that the latter actually came back from the outside, Lung Bingshuang was surprised. At the same time, his anger subsided unconsciously. This was also clearly revealed by Xiao Yang, who noticed the former's emotion. He immediately turned his head slightly, frowned at Lung Bingshuang and asked in doubt, "What's the matter? What happened?" Hearing the speech, Cold Frost's beautiful eyes flashed slightly, but he avoided Xiao Yang's sight. Then he quickly left here, leaving only Xiao Yang and Murong Xian. If Lung Bingshuang didn't say it, Xiao Yang could only focus his eyes on the person in front of him. The latter was stunned. Looking at Xiao Yang's curious eyes, Murong Xian couldn't help but feel a strange feeling. Maybe Xiao Yang in front of him could help him. Although this feeling was abrupt and had no omen or reason, but now, Lung Bingshuang's affair has been related to the rise and fall of their whole family. How could he manage so much? Then he told Xiao Yang all the purposes of his trip. However, when Murong Xian spit out the first sentence, the expression on Xiao Yang's face suddenly solidified. "You mean, Tanyao Huang clan?" After a long time, Murongshuan told Xiao Yang the purpose of his coming to Shaolin Mountain. In the whole process, Xiao Yang's face showed a dignified look, especially in the end, his face even showed a gloomy color. Tanyao Huang clan, they are one of the supreme overlords in the world of Warcraft. Why did they find her? After hearing everything Murang Xian said, Xiao Yang thought for a long time, but he opened his mouth and spit out such a sentence. Compared with what Murang Xian said, Xiao Yang was more curious about why they were interested in Lung Bingshuang, a woman far away in the western regions. As soon as Xiao Yang said this, Murang Xian's face was stunned. In a moment, he came back to his mind. It's no surprise that Xiao Yang asked so. If Lung Bingshuang had nothing special, it would be impossible for the Tianyao Huang family to find her. After a long hesitation, Murang Xian raised his eyes again, stared at Xiao Yang in front of him, and said slowly, "Mr. Xiao Yang, I'm afraid you'll be shocked when you hear my next first sentence." Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed and his heart was full of doubts. At the same time, he was more curious about the real identity of Lung Bingshuang. In fact, Lung Bingshuang, she is also the person of Tianyao Huang family. Buzz. Murang Xian's words were like an invisible bomb. They suddenly exploded in Xiao Yang's mind. An amazing word, an amazing storm, raged wildly in Xiao Yang's mind. Until after a good film, Xiao Yang looked up in disbelief and locked his eyes on Murang Xian in front of him. It seemed that he was afraid that he had heard wrong. When he saw Murang Xian nodding affirmatively, his whole body suddenly coagulated, as if it had turned into a statue in an instant. No matter how, Xiao Yang didn't expect that the cold frost in the barren western region would be a person of the Tianyao Huang family. But in that case, how could she stay here? According to Xiao Yang, the family rules of Tianyao Huang family are always strict, and people rarely leave the family. Even if they die, most people of Tianyao Huang family must die in the family. Even if they die in the outside world, they must bring the body back. But why is Leng Bingshuang a member of Tianyao Huang family? How could they survive in the most barren western regions of the continent? Seeing the surprised and suspicious color on Xiao Yang's face, Murang Xian had to sigh helplessly, raised his head and asked Xiao Yang, "I wonder if Mr. Xiao Yang has ever heard of Bingfeng?" Hearing this, Xiao Yang's face was slightly stunned. In the end, he shook his head in embarrassment. Even with his experience, he had never heard of any ice foam. Seeing this, Murang Xian smiled and nodded in anticipation, and then said, "Lung Bingshuang belongs to the Bingfeng family, and Bingfeng was one of the two major races of the Tianyao Huang family as early as that year." Next, Murang Xian told Xiao Yang the exact identity of Bingfeng family and Leng Bingshuang. It turned out that as early as in ancient times, there were two ethnic groups in the Tianyao Huang family. One of them was the Huafeng family, which is now the Tianyao Huang family, and the other was the Bingfeng family. Although the two ethnic groups belong to the Tianyao Huang, the relationship between the races is not good. Years of wars have completely broken the two races. After countless years, the Bingfeng family eventually lost. Less than 10 people were killed in the end. Together with the affiliated groups behind them, they were also implicated, so that they almost destroyed the family. In the end, if the only strong people of the Bingfeng family saved them at the cost of their lives, I'm afraid the affiliated groups behind them would be completely destroyed. This affiliated ethnic group is the Qinghuan family where Murang Xian is located. Under the leadership of the few remaining strong men of the Bingfeng family, the Qinghuan family fled the central region all the way and settled down in the remote western region. After countless years, the original Bingfeng family was left with only one person today. As for the Qinghuan family, although the ethnic group still exists, its heritage and strength are already much lower than before. He had to commit himself to the depths of the western wasteland and still guard the land where the strong of the Ice Phoenix family fell. Now, the Tianyao Phoenix family is coming again, and takes the overall fate of the Qinghuan family as a threat chip, asking them to bring Lung Bingshuang back and ask Lung Bingshuang to leave with them. However, Murang Xian also knows Lung Bingshuang's nature, but he has to come here for the fate of the whole race, but the result doesn't seem to matter. Who? With a long breath, Xiao Yang nodded calmly, stretched out his hand, patted Murang Xian's shoulder in front of him, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, she will go, I say." At the same time, Xiao Yang's eyes turned and looked at the void not far from them. While Xiao Yang's eyes looked, the void that was originally empty was suddenly slightly distorted. Then, the graceful cold frost appeared in front of them again, glanced at Xiao Yang, and then fell on Murang Xian, frown deep voice channel. Why didn't you say such a big thing just now? Hearing the speech, Murang Xian's face suddenly showed an embarrassment. After a long time, he said helplessly, "It's my father. He only asked me to ask you if you would like to go back. If not, you must not coerce you to go back for any reason. He said that the family is small, and your choice is the most important." Ridiculous. What is a small family? Do you want me to feel guilty for you all my life? Those guys are a group of mean people. It's disgusting that they still use such indiscriminate means to achieve their goals. Now, you and I are going to the western wasteland together. I want to see how arrogant and domineering they are. After that, Lung Bingshuang wanted to start, but he saw Xiao Yang's body move and followed her closely. "What are you doing?" The cold frost frowned and frowned. "Hihi, if someone wants to take my woman away, why don't I see her in person?" In this regard, Xiao Yang smiled. When Lung Bingshuang was about to attack, it was in the latter's stunned eyes that he grabbed her jade hand and held it in the palm of his hand, and stared at her with an overbearing face. For a moment, Lung Bingshuang didn't know why. The anger that should have risen in his heart went out in an instant when he was held by Xiao Yang's big hand, even dare not face to face with Xiao Yang's eyes. After the two, Murang Xian was also shocked and looked at the two people in front of him. Especially when he saw the crimson color on the cold frost's pretty face, he immediately seemed to understand something. He opened his mouth, but was speechless for a while. He had to follow behind the two people silently, and the party quickly left the Shaolin Mountains, moving rapidly towards the western wasteland. In situ, Tianying and others saw Xiao Yang and Lung Bingshuang leave. They also looked at each other, shrugged and left one after another. At the same time, on another mountain peak, the little medical fairy in white dress was also looking at the back of Xiao Yang and Lung Bingshuang. This video will end here.